I welcome everybody to this webinar. It's a part of the series Spotlight on Education. And today we're going to talk about how to prepare a COIL. My name is Lorena Silos. I teach and research at the University of Alcalá, and I also work together with the Vice President of International Relations in topics related to internationalization. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing Professor Roberto Scaramuzzino and Professor Tanja Banerji, who have been working together to prepare a COIL program. Professor Scaramuzzino is Associate Professor at the School of Social Work at Lund University, and Professor Tanja Banerji is Assistant Head of Department at the Department of Child Welfare and Social Work at the Arctic University of Tromsö. They have been preparing this COIL program, and which will be launched in spring 2025. And they are going to explain to us how they have organized this program, what steps they've been taking to make it a success. And we're really looking forward to listening to you. Right now, we have 42 participants in the room. I would like to ask you to save all the questions you have and write them in the chat. And at the end of the session, we'll have approximately half an hour to deal with all the questions or ideas you might have and discuss them together with our speakers today. So what is a COIL? We all know that is the definition or the acronym for Collaborative Online International Learning. But I would like to give the floor to Professor Roberto Scaramuzzino and Professor Tanja Banerji so that they can explain a bit more in detail what this entails and how they've been working to offer this program next spring. So thank you very much. The floor is all yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I will start a little bit talking about how we've been working with this, and then Tanja, you will continue, and we will try to also keep this also as a dialogue, because as you understand, we are in the middle of starting to implement this. This will be implemented, as Lorena said, next spring, but time flies, and a lot of things are organized at our university quite early for the spring. So we have decided to meet actually in real life, and we are at the moment both in campus Harstad for the Arctic University of Norway, and we have been working with the COIL since yesterday morning. So what is a COIL? The acronym, as Lorena said, stands for Collaborative Online International Learning. And as the acronym gives away, it's supposed to be collaborative. Students are supposed to collaborate on something, a topic, pedagogical activities. The pedagogical methods should be student-centered, innovative, and adequate, of course, for the task. Online means that it does not include physical mobility. It should be based on digital technologies to meet on distance between the students. It should be related to a collaboration across cultural differences, different contexts. In the definition of UGLO, it's also supposed to be interdisciplinary or cross-disciplinary. And what is perhaps also important to say, and what I will come back to this, but what made me interested in this is that it's not so much about building new courses or new programs, but it is something that's implemented within the courses that we already have. So the idea is that two partner universities have two courses that could collaborate on a COIL, and then you create some activities that are collaborative within each course, but you do not create a new course. It's rather that you share, our students will share some activities with the Norwegian students and do some things together, but within the framework of each department's course, which of course makes it from an administrative point of view, at least, quite much easier. You don't need to create something new. You share an activity with another present course. It should be between 2 and 4 ECTs, European credits, and it should involve 30 or more students in total. So at least if you share this 50-50, it's 15 students for each from each partner university. So how will we do this? I mean, we sent an application for this, and we received this funding for seed money. And this is since yesterday, we started more and more to try to make it more concrete. What do we want to do in specific? We want to engage our students, the Swedish student and the Norwegian students, into some virtual engagement together. We think about the same size for our groups. We haven't decided yet how big they will be. But we think that it's important to keep it small, to not involve too many students, so that to keep also track of the activities that they're doing. We think of involving them in very early, with informing them early in the course. This will be implemented, I think, late spring 2025. But already at the beginning, I think already in January, we'll introduce this for our students at each campus, at each department. But very early, we will involve them into activities together to start to some kind of ice breaking. Of course, they need to get to know each other. They will need to have a proper introduction to the course, but also to each other. We envision at the moment to have lectures from both departments for all the students together, and then at least 2-day workshops in which the students will discuss and work together virtually, but on the similar topic, and based also on similar literature that they've read. We think that the final product or outcome of this will be a common paper for each group of students, but also, which we think will be interesting, to work much with visual means. For example, photo, video collage is something that they do together that is not just in written. We think that it will be very engaging for them, and also cross language barriers, to work with something also visual, something that you also can present and you can discuss together. Something more about this, Tanja? Have I missed something?
No, I think you have made a good start, good outline of our collaboration so far.
Thank you.
And I will say something more about it as well later. But yeah. Roberto, you started the collaboration by reaching out. You had some thoughts on making a COIL. How did you get to start by reaching out? Because you did the reaching out part to us, or seeking partnerships.
Yes. So I mean, for me, it started a little bit with a challenge, I think, that I felt as responsible for internationalization at the School of Social Work, that we had. It wasn't so easy to internationalize our education. The program is quite strict when it comes to the recognition of courses, so we don't have that many students going with Erasmus. A lot of our teaching is in Swedish. Our students are preparing to work in Swedish social services, so mobility has not been so easy. We have, of course, students doing their internship abroad, but it's not the same thing, of course, as doing courses abroad. And I was at the workshop in autumn 2023, I think, at Lund University, discussing a COIL, and I thought this seems to be a good idea for how to implement something where we know that our curriculum are not so flexible. This would allow us to do something in collaboration with a partner university without needing to rewrite our curriculum, without needing to move our students, and this idea of that you need to get grades and you get credits, and then you need to recognize them. A lot of administrative burden would be easier with this. So we decided to reach out, and we realized that the UGLO is a good network for this. So we decided to reach out through the UGLO network to find some partner that would like to do this together with us. We sent out 3 proposals for COILs. When it comes to the preparation of these proposals, it was a little bit tricky because we were thinking, okay, we need to do something concrete enough so that somebody that reads this thinks, wow, this is cool, this I want to participate in. And at the same time, not too detailed for giving the feeling that we already decided everything, because of course it's supposed to be collaborative between students, but also of course between departments. So not giving the idea that everything is already decided. So we sent out 3, I think, proposals that were a little bit in between. There were some ideas about what we wanted to do, what kind of target for students, the topic, but at the same time to open up for a collaboration. And we sent those, helped by the UGLO network, we sent this out through the network to all partners, asking for, is somebody interested to doing this with us? And perhaps you can continue, Tanja, and say, how did you feel about receiving this proposal of collaboration?
Yes, we got also the proposals through our UGLO office at the Arctic University of Norway. They sent us the documents, the 3 proposals, and we thought, yes, this looks very interesting. And we took the 3 proposals and had a discussion at the department and decided on suggesting that we go further with one of them that had to do with professional, something that we thought would be very nice at the early stages of a bachelor education, when the role of a social worker is in focus at the bachelor's program, and to lift the students' eyes a little bit further than their own country, their own fellow students, and their own context, but not too far away. And that was also very interesting for us, that it came from Sweden. We share a lot of the similarities in the welfare systems and so on. So we thought that this could be a good framework to work together and let the students have some feeling of not being alone in Norway doing social work, but they are a part of a bigger community of social workers, also in the Nordics, so to speak. So this one proposal that had to do with the professional role and working at the professional role fit perfectly with what we thought would be a good plan. So we answered the call by writing, because you had supplied us with your email address, of course. So we could ditch the UGLO office and go directly to you as the person in charge at the Lund University, and write to you and say, hey, yes, this looks very interesting. I think we need to meet. And from there on, I think it went quite quickly. We had our first meeting quite early on after we had reached out. We had an online meeting. And after that, we started looking at the framework of our first year, because very early on, we started talking about, do we have a match when it comes to the timeline, the time of when our students are into what in their curriculums. And soon we found out that, yes, we have at the same time of the year, they are doing similar things and discussing similar perspectives and having similar field works in their curriculum. So we started talking very concretely on how and when we could go forward. And I can continue a little bit on the timeline, because we went through this timeline, and yesterday, as we met for the first time in real life, after 4 digital meetings altogether, and after the kind of the departmental, you being Roberto being the international coordinator, and me being in the management at the department, we included, after one meeting, we included also who we thought would be the teachers who could take this concretely forward. So after some initial meetings at the kind of the formal level, we also included the teacher staff in the meetings, and from there on it went quite quickly. And it was a very good process, also virtually. Ideas were put forward and discussed, and different ideas, and some of them were ditched, and some of them we then moved forward on. And after 4 virtual meetings, we decided that we had to meet in real life, because we felt maybe that we came so far virtually, but we needed to have the opportunity to also meet each other physically and share discussions, and also have some social interaction, so to get to know each other a bit more, and that we did yesterday. And yesterday evening we shared a meal together, and also with the teaching staff. Roberto came with a colleague from Lund, so you're 2 visiting at the Arctic University of Norway. And after a whole day of discussing the COIL, the concrete COIL tasks and perspectives, we then also shared a dinner yesterday evening, which was we find it very important also to include kind of a social meeting or social discussion in the. And we are actually also planning for another meeting. We feel that when comes October-ish or something like that, we might want to meet one more time in real life to finalize the dates and the documents that the students are given, and the concrete framework, so that when we meet the students for the first time in January, and then then after that we'll meet them once with a seminar where we are going to give lectures, and then another workshop when the students are doing the concrete collaboration activity. So altogether there will be 3, maybe 4 meeting points during the spring term. And we found that we need to be really strict on giving the same information to the teacher and the staff that are meeting the students, and also the students at both universities, so that when the students meet, they will know exactly the same things. In that way, we are avoiding misunderstandings or not knowing what is going to happen and things like that. So we have put much focus on the being clear and saying the same things. And that means that the staff will also have to work together. They will meet the students together at the meeting. So the staff will also collaborate virtually with the students from both universities. That is some of it. Roberto, did I forget things important?
No, but perhaps I could add just that what we think is that we will have some moments that are in plenum with all the students, but then we plan to divide them into smaller groups that are include both students from Sweden and Norway of a proper size, hopefully 6-7 students, to allow them to have a little bit of perhaps a more familiar environment in which they feel a little bit more comfortable in sharing and discussing things, and with a group of teachers, perhaps 3-4 of us, that will move between these virtual rooms to facilitate and guide a little bit the discussions, and there is where we hope most of the interaction between the students will happen. So that is we also would like to include a resource that we have at Lund University that is language pedagogists that will try to involve them early with the students to discuss a little bit about communicating in English, intercultural communication, trying to build up a little bit more of this kind of competencies that you need when you start to work digitally, and especially with people from other countries which priorly you don't know.
Yes, good point, Roberto.
Yes, something we discussed, I think, also is the language barriers. I mean, we realized that many of us share which are native speakers of Nordic languages. We can speak each other in Nordic languages, but not our students have Nordic languages as their primary language. So we will, of course, encourage our students to speak in English as much as possible, but we hope that being able to perhaps aid each other with some Swedish, Norwegian language skills, that it will make the students a little bit more comfortable in meeting. That is something we talked about. At the same time, as we know that speaking Nordic language with each other is also something that can exclude people that are not native speakers of the Nordic languages. So we will have to guide them a little bit there. But we think that we hope that the students will see this as an opportunity to also perhaps increase their skills in English language and communicating with other students.
And we discussed, now I remember what I forgot, because we discussed that when the students meet each other, and as you say, they should speak English. Many of them will be quite fluent in English, but many will perhaps not. To have something concrete, to have a theme for the tasks and the activities that the students are going to do, will help them in opening up and starting communicate with each other, and perhaps also will give them the opportunity to prepare. Maybe they can prepare some things in English, some things that they want to say, or some things that they want to show, or something in beforehand, so that the communication perhaps flows a little bit easier in the breakout rooms that we make the students do activities in.
Also, something that can be said is that we, as Tanja said, we were very. It was very nice to see how our courses had very much a parallel way of working, which also says something perhaps about the education in social work, that we need to involve our students very early into the field of practice. But at the same time, it was clear, for example, that the Norwegian students meet the practice for a much longer time than our students do. Your students are for a few weeks, at least in the first year out in the practice. Our students at the first term are out between 3 and 5 days. So of course that gives a little bit of different preconditions when it comes to meeting the field. We have and I think that's important also to keep in mind. that the way in which then we, for example, use and examine the students, that needs to be within each course curriculum. So we will involve them into activities, but then the output will be assessed and examined at each department. We won't be examining each other's students, because these outcomes fall into different learning outcomes that we expect the student to do. We have common learning outcomes for the COIL, but then these COILs are implemented within courses that have different learning outcomes, even though I would imagine that if we compare our learning outcomes, perhaps they are similar still, Tanja, but the assessment of whether the students have reached the learning outcomes of the course will be done at Lund and here at the Arctic University separately.
And that is perhaps the magic of the COIL as well, that we don't, and what you were saying earlier about the administrative resources not being as much there, that the assessment and everything else fits into the local curriculum. And it's kind of, and also what is important to I think to say is that this activity is not in addition to what they are doing in their course at Lund or at UIT, Arctic University. It's instead of, but so that the learning outcomes are filled by this COIL work, so that the students will not have the feeling that, oh, this is something that they have to do on top of everything else that is happening in the course. So this is also important for the student, I think, motivation to take part and use their time and efforts to collaborate.
Yeah, and about that, I think also there we have, at the moment, we have a little bit different plans for how we will enroll the students. At the UIT, you're planning for including all the students here at Campus Hallstad, while we, at least at the moment, plan to have it voluntary. So we will ask students to voluntarily enroll into COIL groups. Hope to have enough interested students. If not, we will have to have a plan B with more of a compulsory measure. But our hope is, of course, to have enough students that find this attractive and want to do this. And then we will have some students, because we have too many students to involve them all into the COIL activity. So we'll have some COIL groups doing activity with the Norwegian students, and then we will have some groups at Lund that will do the regular course with a fellow Swedish student and not involved in the COIL. And if it goes as planned, we will have enough interest from students without needing to say, you will go to do the COIL, because we think that doing, because as we cannot involve every one of them, it would be easier to say that people have enrolled into, rather than say that some need to do it, because there is always students comparing with each other, and we think that of course is a little bit more problematic than saying that this is a voluntary. But as said, when you decide to enter a COIL, then the activities become compulsory in the sense that they are going to be graded. So this is how we plan to handle it. So we think that COIL offers the flexibility to do this kind of different arrangements depending on how the course is structured, how the students are, and so on. Something else, Tanja, before we leave the floor for questions? Yeah,
you said something. I'll say a few more words on because as Lund's university is a bigger university with more students, and our UIT social work has fewer students as a smaller university. There has been some issues on the how to make a group that is of similar size, because we found that would be an important factor to not have many Lund Swedish students and few Norwegian. So we wanted to make it so that there are approximately similar amount of students. So this will be perhaps a kind of a a challenge in collaborating with different sized universities, different sized student groups, and so forth. But there are ways to find a way overcome these issues we find. I think we've said quite a lot, Roberto. I think we've been through how far we have come and illustrated that this is a work in progress, and it is really in progress as we are in the middle of it. And it is a very exciting process. I'm very happy that we reacted on the reaching out from the Lund for collaborative partners, and we looking forward to the rest of the journey together.
Yeah, thank you very much, both of you. I think, yeah, you have covered loads of topics and explained very many things to us, to the audience, and I'm sure you've made us eager to organize a COIL, and that's also one of the goals of this talk. We have a few questions in the chat. Sarah has already answered the first one, which was a bit more administrative, but Maria Paula would like to thank you for the presentation. And she would like to know, this is a more specific question perhaps for Roberto, because she would like to know how to use the resource on intercultural communication that the University of Lund provides. And she wonders if it's something that could be used for Lund. Maybe if you link it perhaps to what you mentioned about this preparatory course on the use of English language and intercultural communication, how we could support students that don't have English as a native language in order to get the best out of the COIL.
Yeah, I'm not perhaps, I mean, for what I know, we already use resources. I think they're connected to the library at the social sciences. I'm not sure that all the libraries have this, but we have language pedagogists that already work with our students at the beginning of the course. We have students that have difficulties with the Swedish language because they have a foreign background. We have students that have difficulties sometimes with English. So we have this language pedagogist from the library coming to talk with our students. And our idea, and this is very much, we will see what extent is workable, if we could involve the same staff to work a little bit with our COIL groups and talk a little bit about communicating in different languages. So this is very much tentative. I don't know if UGLO has also this kind of resources. When I had this workshop in Lund, and that was organized with collaboration with the University of Dallas, they said that they thought that this was a good idea to start the COIL by involving the student in some kind of workshops about intercultural communication. So we are still looking about these resources, but I know that the libraries have this kind of language workshops, language pedagogists that are available for students that are in difficulties with language issues, and we were hoping to involve them into giving some kind of coaching to our students before they enter this.
Thank you very much, Roberto. Mirjana would like to know, what about the accreditation of study programs? Should the COIL be implemented prior to the accreditation of the program, or could we engage with it in the established one? I suppose this is a matter of legal questions regarding each of the universities. I don't know if that's what she means, like if the program needs to be accredited, needs to be passed by an authority in the country, whether the COIL should be implemented prior to this accreditation or throughout the process. And she also wonders about the language. Is there a law at your universities or countries that limits the use of English at the university? Is that a problem for you at all? Maybe at bachelor level?
Okay, I can start. Maybe Tanja can say something about how it is at UIT. At Lund, I mean, we didn't need to accredit this. I mean, I passed this through the head of department that thought it was a good idea. And the idea was that we need to do this without needing to change the curriculum. And if you don't change the curriculum, you don't need to go through the board of the department. You need to need to go to the board of the faculty. We are doing this. We are just, I mean, in the same way as I could change a lecture within my course, within the same curriculum. This is we taught this as within the same framework as I would change something in the way in which I teach at my course. I could change a lecture without having some kind of this accredited. So, but of course, it depends how bureaucratic they organize the teaching at different universities is. And when it comes to the language, I think it's an important issue. I don't think we can ask our students to be examined in English. So I think that if they want, they could ask for having examination in Swedish. So we need to consider this. We might need to ask our students to write in the Nordic languages if they ask for it. So this is something we need to discuss a little bit with each other and with administrative personnel at our department. And yes, but I think that if a student at the bachelor level asks to be examined in Swedish, we need to provide that opportunity. But we still think that the languages are quite close, so that they could write in the Nordic languages together, or otherwise this we need to figure out. It's part of the big questions that I haven't really sorted this out, but it's a really good question.
Would you like
Tanja?
to add anything, Tanja?
Yes, but as this is not a part of the official exam process,
Okay.
there is not that issue of the examination situation. I think we have been talking. This is a COIL is a kind of a pedagogical, just like you said, Roberto. It's how you implement your learning outcomes together with an international partner. I think that's the scope of it. So, but the language thing is still because we will ask the students to do some written assignment, even though it's not a proper examination situation. It'll still be a task, and we have been talking about how and if and. But what we will get from this is internationalization at home, as it's called. We will get an international experience for the students in our universities without having to travel or away from there. So this will have, and this is also a learning outcome. We international social work, global, more global Nordic perspectives on social work is also within the curriculum. So this will also fit the learning outcomes of the internationalization views to the bachelor.
Thank you, Tanja. I think you have both answered Mirjana's question and also Mikael's, who was wondering what happens if a student fails this part of the course. But if I understood it correctly, you have just said that this is not examined per se, that this is just a part of the learning outcome, and the examination will not be related to whatever they deal with in the COIL. Is that right? In order to answer Mikael's question, or is there a chance for a student to fail the part of the COIL? And in that case, how would this student be re-examined, or how could he or she cover back this part that he has failed?
Well, I think that, I mean, this is a good point. I haven't thought so much about this. I put it on my notes about things we need to consider, at least in Lund, because, yeah, part of this will be examined within the framework of the course. I would imagine that perhaps we could think of something to complement by perhaps writing, if it's not enough, the part they've done in collaboration, there might be an extra assignment reflecting on something that they would do on their own, not in collaboration, of course, with the Norwegian students. So perhaps that would be a solution. But I don't think that. But it's a good point. We need to have a plan for that. How to still, it's a small part of the examination of the course. So in my view, it's not going to be an issue for most students. But yeah, we need to have a plan for this. It's a good point. But I would imagine something as an extra assignment, perhaps writing a short reflection, for example, on specific learning outcomes when it comes to the collaboration that will be done by the Lund students and examined by the staff at our department.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Very valid point there. And yeah. Well, I won't say anything more. Time is flying. Yeah.
Yeah, there. Ivana has a couple of questions for you. What about? She was wondering what happens with the administrative obstacles if you change the teaching load of a teacher. Like you're supposed to teach, I don't know, 60 hours for a course, and someone else comes. Like for example, in your case, Roberto should teach 60 hours and Tanja comes and teaches 20, and what happens then? Is that a problem within the department? And she would also like to know, well, maybe you can answer that question and I'll go back to Ivana after. What have you thought about that? How your teaching load will be affected by sharing the course with someone else?
Maybe I can try and answer a little bit. Because the teaching is happening within the course structure at the different universities. It won't be like Roberto is doing. His workload is not related to mine at all. His workload is related to his Lund course, and my workload is related to UIT course load. So however much I do, and it will be a kind of a piece of collaborative work, and we'll share it, and whatever I will I'll do it under the UIT flag, and whatever Roberto is doing will be under the Lund flag, and he has to discuss with his department.
No one will be having a nap while their colleague is teaching. That's for sure.
Yeah. I think that the added value, of course, is that we will be teaching each other's students. So, I mean, if I give a lecture, that will benefit the Norwegian students, and when Tanja and her colleagues come in and do some teaching, it will benefit our students. So in a sense, we are double staff. From that is the positive view on this. Of course, there will be more work for perhaps preparing the COIL, reading new literature, perhaps. But my idea is still that in the same way as the students are not doing work on top of what they are supposed to do, the same goes for the teachers. This is instead of teaching for our staff at least. I mean, some teachers will be having groups that are doing the traditional way in which we do the course, and some will be in the more COILed part of the course, and hopefully the workload will not be more. And then, of course, there is the seed money that we received from the UGLO. We shared it's 50,000 euros for each department, and for our point of view, part of that will go to compensate teachers for hours that perhaps will be more, but that we have not decided yet. So there is a little bit of funding as well that can be used to this. And the idea, of course, is but the idea is that the workload in the COIL is instead of doing other teaching, that is the same way as for the students.
And maybe we have to discuss a little bit so that we make it doable within the hours that are assigned for the course. So it'll maybe frame it in that sense a little bit also.
Yeah, Ivana was just adding that, well, thank you for clarifying this. And I suppose this is like also like a specific for one university or the other, that sometimes we have, she says, and that would not enough students for some courses, and maybe that lecture doesn't take place in the end. That's what she's also saying. Ivana also had a question with regards to the structure, which is also linked to Christine's question. Ivana was wondering if like a teaching unit can be only a teaching unit like 2 to 4 ECTS can be blended in a COIL way, like you introduce it in a course, if I understand this correctly. And Christine wonders if it would be possible to introduce a COIL as a part of a larger course. I don't know if they both want to say that could we teach an entire course following the COIL methodology, or is it only like some 2 or 3 units or 1 or 2 units that could be blended? I don't know if you could maybe.
I mean, as far as I understand it, COIL is usually used to collaborate on different courses, and the idea is that you don't share everything. Then how much you share, that's very much up to the university. The more you share, the more you need to adapt. That would be my. I mean, if we, Tanja, would decide that we would share more than this 3 weeks of work with our students, probably we would have to adapt much more, because I mean. And then perhaps there would be the issue of to what extent can you adapt the course that much without changing the curriculum? Because our idea is still, as I say, we don't want to change the curriculum, because that means a completely different administrative work for something that at the moment, I mean, we hope, of course, to do this more again, because not that is not just a once thing, but still. To change the curriculum is always difficult. But if you would find a partner that is a very similar course as yours, I don't think there is a limit on to what extent you could collaborate on different moments. So that's very much up to how different are the courses, how much do you want to engage with merging activities, but as I said, for me the important thing has always been to avoid changing too much in the structure of the course, but more docking them into each other as far as possible.
Yeah, that makes me wonder as well, like one of the main questions regarding COIL, if we're not building new courses and you say that courses between the 2 universities or the 3 universities should be similar, what sort of content are students gaining from COIL? How can we sell this initiative to students? I don't know if you follow my question.
Yeah.
Like what sort
Tanja,
of what do they learn specifically with this new methodology?
Well, that's a very good question. I think well, at least that will differ, I think, from COIL to COIL and collaboration to collaboration. But in our case, I think what they learn is to see what is similar and what is different between two neighbor states, nations, and to learn from each other's also contexts, the context of urban southern part of Sweden and a very northern part of Norway with its differences, and to collaborate natural kind of, because what is the magic part of this is that it is very easy, and that's on the question of how much of a course you should do a COIL on. I think start with it as little as possible to make it easy for the teachers and for the students to get to know this methodology and to share and to discuss with other student colleagues with a little bit different views, different contexts they come from and live in and are going to be professionals in. So I think and in social work, I think and that we found just this the the competence of the professional role, that this would be the theme that we would explore on. I think that it is a very concrete and a good theme for working together. Yeah, I hope I answered some of them.
Yeah, I mean, this ties with what you said before, that is just a means of internationalization at home, that they don't need, especially when traveling within Europe has become so complicated, that they don't need to travel abroad to get these new perspectives, new approaches to teaching, to understanding their own subject. Mirna, yeah, sorry.
No, I just wanted to add something.
Ahead. Yeah,
that it's. I think for having a COIL, you should also, of course, think they should be collaborative. So try to involve the students to interact with each other, not just lectures, because lectures we can give to each other. That I think is and could give an added value. But the important thing with a COIL should be that you should engage. You should allow the students to actually interact and collaborate. And that doesn't need to be that they do a written assignment together, but at least some kind of more of the seminar workshop kind of pedagogical activity rather than the front lecture, because I don't expect them to interact extremely much during the lectures, because there will be a lot of people and perhaps not that familiar with asking a lot of questions and so on. So the idea is, of course, to bring them into smaller groups in which they will hopefully share much more about their experiences of being out in the field of practice.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah, we have just time for a last question, which I think will help us understand a bit more what you've done so far. Mirna would like to know if you've encountered any challenges while working on the project, like with regard to students, teamwork, how they communicate. Well, this hasn't been implemented yet, but
no.
Like, what do you think could maybe challenges you think you fear or you have in mind that you could encounter?
I mean, it's for me, it's much related to the motivation. I mean, we need to motivate the students that this is something that it's not. We are not the students that are given this or that apply for this and enroll into this are not giving something that is affecting them negatively, rather positively. This is an opportunity to learn something more and to keep them motivated to actually share and collaborate with their fellow students. And that is, for me, and we will not know that until we actually we can prepare as much as we want, and we have our ideas about how much our students are interested into this. My view is that the students at the School of Social Work are interested into international perspectives, but then we know that when we interact with them, we need to make it clear for them what is it in for them, and hopefully they see the opportunity of learning more by interacting with other students, and we see also other opportunities for collaboration in the future, I think.
Thank you. Tanja, would you like to add anything?
No, I think that was a very good answer. The staff, one thing that because you can't be alone in this, you need to have your colleagues at the local universities also with you, and that could be a hurdle to kind of also to get your colleagues in on this to be a part of it, but that has not, as far as so far, has not been a problem. It seems that the teaching colleagues are very interested in doing collaboration with Lund in this case, and are very eager to take part.
That is great to hear.
Yeah.
That's really good. That's really motivating. And I think you have also answered Yelena's last question. She was wondering how to persuade them to apply for COIL. Yeah.
Sorry, just a brief. At the School of Social Work, we have worked also for a few years with these certificates of international merit, which is when the students do international activities, they get some kind of they can add this to their curriculum as a separate diploma that shows that they have international competencies. That's one of the way in which we have worked with involving the students into. So you actually, it's almost like a parallel course. We are not examining them, but at the end of their bachelor, they write a short reflection report about what they've learned through internationalization, and on basis of that, they get the diploma. And this, we will frame this in the framework of this certificate of international merit, saying that this could be part of your merit. So you, with this added with other activities, you could get this diploma when you finish. This is, we hope for that to be.
Yeah, definitely. That is a benefit, and I think that is the way we should all go in order also to make the alliance stronger, that students, both staff and students, collaborate with one another. So I think COILs are really a big thing for UGLO in general. Well, I would like to thank you enormously for sharing your thoughts, your experiences, and all the work you've done so far. I really wish you the best for the coming spring. I believe, I have the feeling that your program will be a real success, and I look forward to hearing about it. The Weiner Singers will continue in the autumn with a talk on educational design with two colleagues from LMU and the Arctic University of Tromsö as well. And you will find more information on UGLO's website when time comes. I thank you all for participating. I also would like to thank the people behind the scenes, Sara, Anna, and Sonia. Yeah, when you're leaving the seminar, 5 questions, a very short survey will pop up, and we will be extremely thankful if you could answer those questions, because they really help us in organizing this series. Well, thank you very much. Have a lovely day. And yeah, thank you again. Bye.